Hey, Juventini, and welcome back to the All Juve Cast channel where it's all Juve all the time. It's your one-stop shop for everything Juventus. So if you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. Now, I have Omar with me, and today we are very, very happy to welcome Amit to the show. And what we're going to do is we just want to have a general discussion about the Champions League in general. And then towards the end, we will get Amit's view, an outsider's view and perspective on what's currently going on at Juventus, because us as Juventus fans tend to go at it quite a bit, and we have all sorts of wild expectations for a team, and it's always nice to have somebody from the outside looking in give their thoughts and perspective as to what exactly is happening at Juventus. So, without further ado, welcome, Amit. We would love to have you tell everybody about yourself and introduce yourself to us.
Well, thank you, Alberto and Omer. I'm very happy to be here. I'm a sport journalist. Actually, I'm writing about European football and you can say sports from all around the world. For the last 2 decades, I've been working in, let's say, the most popular media organizations in Israel. And I've been covering, of course, the Champions League, all the biggest European leagues, such as the Serie A, the Premier League, Bundesliga, and all others. I'm a follower of course, of Juventus, and I also, from time to time, I do lectures about football history and football trends. Many different topics, and my passion is football and music, and that's it. So I also had inter alia, I had my own podcast speaking about European football, which was very popular. And Omer was one of my guests. I interviewed. I had each week a fan of a different club, and we, dig into this specific club for a 2 hour discussion. And I'm happy to be here with you and sharing my ideas and my opinions.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we're going to get to those opinions and those thoughts. And I think we'll start off with Champions League discussion and whatnot, and probably kick it off with right out of the gate. Which two teams do you see making it to the final?
I think two teams who you have to I have actually to consider them as favorites are the two English teams, Liverpool. I think as long as Van Dijk is fit, Liverpool are you have to give them some big chances. They already have the quality. They have the players. They now actually have a deeper squad than what they had when they won the Champions League a few years ago. With Jota, with Luis Diaz, and very very deep in midfield as well. They had like 6 different options now, even with young Harvey Elliott. I think Liverpool is a complete team, experienced team with a great coach in Jurgen Klopp, who knows how to change matches even when the team needs to deal with adversity. They go down like we saw last round in the Premier League when they were down against Norwich. You can wake them up, and Mo Salah is one of the top 3 players, individually speaking, around the world. Sane is there, and Jota. They have these players who can make the difference all by themselves, and winner mentality. So they are one of my favorites. The other one is Manchester City. I have a problem with City, defensively speaking. When things get tough, City has this. They tend to break. When they concede the first goal, like we saw against Chelsea in the final last year. And the statistics show that City are not that good when they come up against good teams, and they fall behind. So I have my doubts, but they have the experience. They've been around there. They were in the finals, semifinals, and they have this hunger, this hunger of winning this title that they've been missing for the last decade. You have to count them, of course, as each year. City are the bookies' favorites,
Yeah.
so you count them. And also, Chelsea, when Jorginho and Kante, they are the reigning champions. And when Jorginho and Kante and Kovacic are all fit, they are good, and especially when they have no Premier League title ambitions left, they are also dangerous. So my focus is on teams from the Premier League, especially. Outside the Premier League, I think Bayern Munich should have been there in the list, but I'm afraid too many problems defensively and in terms of management of this team. Some things are not quite well at Bayern. All these talks. Niklas Zule, one of their leading defensive players, is now leaving to Dortmund, and some unwilling noises. Their form is not what it should have been at this stage. So I counted them before, but nowadays I only count actually the Premier League teams, and maybe Real Madrid. That's it. That's
Yeah.
the four teams, the three English
So
teams and Real Madrid.
yeah, and before Omar gets to the next question we have for you, obviously Harold come in and you kind of touched on it. Can Bayern compete with the rich Premier League clubs and PSG and whatnot? There was a percentage tweet that came out about a percentage of chances to win Champions League. Some of the teams had 4%. Juventus, I think, purposely to fire up the fan base, was left off of this list completely. So I don't know if they're saying we have less than a 4% chance of winning this thing, but if you had to put a percentage on Juventus, and don't be afraid because you're on a Juventus channel, even if the percentage is low, because we are very realistic as well. But if you had to put a percentage on Juve and pulling something off there, where would it be
Is the question for me or for Omer?
for you, Avi?
For me, I think Juventus has about 5% chance. Let's say 4 to 5% chance. Um, I think the for me, one of the biggest topics we need to talk about is the regulation change in the Champions League. No more away goals. Even Massimiliano Allegri was asked in the press conference before the Villarreal match just an hour ago. And even he seems not to know exactly. He's going to an uncharted territory. He doesn't know how, because everyone is used to play that an away goal counts as double, and now it's kind of odd. I think we're going to see some big matches going decided by penalties,
Yeah.
since away rules don't count anymore, and it's going to be very, very interesting, this rule change. um, Juventus has, they had, first of all, we all remember that Allegri already brought Juve twice to the finals, losing to both Real Madrid and Barcelona, uh, which were great teams. I don't know if this year we have a team with the quality that those Real and Barca teams had right then, but Juventus as well is not the same team as it used to be. I think we all agree that Juve are underdog. It's Juve has gone, they've gone backwards in the last decade in terms of the defense, and especially the most the part that went backward the most is the midfield. When you had this Pirlo, Vidal, Pogba trio, and then Pjanic later, and like they could contribute 20, 30 goals, and nowadays you get almost nothing
Yeah.
offensively. And I think this is the biggest challenge. uh, but there are some signs of life with the Vlahovic signing, and even Zakaria, who adds a little bit more tenacity, more dynamics to the midfield. But I think in order to win it, it's going to take a miracle, since there are really, really tough teams who play really high intensive,
Yeah.
football in the highest levels from the Premier League.
We are going to dive into your thoughts on Max Allegri and his Juventus whatnot towards the end. Omar, we actually have a question which he started to bring up on the format. So maybe Omar will let you fire that one.
Yeah, so the current format, the format changes every couple of years. I believe since '95 when the Champions League, '93 when the Champions League was introduced. But so far, the last change, we've seen some changes over the years. mainly with the scrapping of the yellow cards before the final. And the
Oh,
latest one, and the latest
Pavel
one has
Nedved says
been,
hi.
yeah, Pavel Nedved is angry today because of that. But what are you pleased with the current format of the Champions League, and what would you have done differently or will do differently in the future?
Well, before I answer your question, Omer, I need to remind our viewers that actually in 2024 there's going to be another big change, massive actually change in the format of the Champions League, which is a reaction to the Super League initiative, which Juve still is one of those holding on to it with Barcelona and Real Madrid. I think 2024 is we're going to have 36 teams instead of 32 right now, and it's going to be something that is it's still hard to imagine. Every team is going to play 9 or 10 different rivals, and it's some kind of format that we are not used to in football actually. So let's see how that unfolds. We should remember as well that since the Super League initiative last April, there's been some structural changes in European football. One of them we should notice is the rising of Nasser Al Khalifi, the PSG chairman and boss, who is now the head of the ECA. Remember that Andrea Agnelli, Juventus president, used to be in this lucrative job, which is very important, is the head of all the big European clubs. And since the Super League initiative took on, Nasser Al Khalifi is now dragging it and trying to be Cheferin, UEFA president, biggest ally. Now let's put aside the politics. I think the Champions League format, there's a lot of criticism about it, but still one cannot deny the fact that the Champions League is very popular. You can say that it's not maximizing the whole profit, that different format with all the bigger teams from the Premier League, something more like a kind of the Super League would have benefited more financially, would have been more just, maybe economically speaking. But when you see how how football fans react to the Champions League, which is by far the most lucrative uh, football club tournament in the world, I think we should remember that as well. And we remember when the Super League, they tried to found the Super League in surprise. Florentino Perez, Agnelli, and all the others, and Laporta and others. There was a big setback, and it was also from footballers who grew up on the Champions League and who value the format. So yes, there is the problems. The group stage, we kind of know 80-90% of the teams who are going to qualify. Bear one big surprise like Barcelona this year, who didn't qualify from their group. Uh, and but yes, mainly I think it's still very prestigious, and there is luck, of course. There is the draw stuff and all the other things. Uh, but I think it works, and I think that it is the best in terms of quality, in terms of interest that we have, on a yearly basis in football. The Champions League is right up there, and I see as well many polls, online polls and different polls that show that like 60 to 70% of people think that the Champions League is more lucrative and more important and more hard winning than the Premier League. And most of these polls are made in England, so it tells you something.
Yeah. So, in terms of these format changes, Amit, do you think it increases, especially this away goal rule, does it increase the chance of maybe seeing a surprise winner? Or is the gap between these top tier teams still too big?
I think you could put your finger on the main favorites, which are, let's say you can add maybe Paris Saint-Germain with Messi and Mbappe, along with Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, but still you have not more than 7, 8 teams that you really take into consideration as potential Champions League winners. I think as well, um, what we're going to find out, that's, my gut feeling is that we're going to see in 2 3 years that they're going to change the rule back and reintroduce maybe the away goals, or they're going to change something, because what I think, or I'm afraid we're going to see, is that many games going into extra time, and many games decided at penalties, and I don't think it's the best solution to decide,
Interesting.
Champions League matches by penalties. You know, for all the just things that were said about the away goals rule, which is undated. It's not updated. It's 30, 40 years ago. It was much more difficult playing away than home, and all this stuff. But still, you need this tiebreaker that brings in some extra spicy, different kind of stuff. And I think, the main thought behind it is that now, without the away goal rule, we're going to see teams playing more open football. I think people are going to be uh, not going to be happy when they see that it's not happening, as we saw in Paris Saint-Germain Real Madrid match, which was not open. It's still a lot on the line, and teams don't get to play that open. There's always this dynamics. One, of course, a better team against a weaker team, and I don't think it's going to change much in terms of style. We're not going to see more goals scored, but it's going to be interesting, and practically no one really knows. But I think that the logic says we're going to see much more overtime games going to overtime and to penalties. And I think I saw that in the last decade, only three ties. I mean, not including finals, ties went to penalties, and so let's see. I hope I'm mistaken, but that's my hinge. That's
And
what I
I'll
think.
pose this question to both of you, even Omar as well, and we could probably start with Omar. Like, it just feels like it's almost a move away from the traditionalist style and whatnot, and in order to capture, the modern fan and whatnot that wants that excitement, wants the goals, doesn't want to see teams play a little more restricted away, like away, just trying to snatch a goal or whatnot. It seems like they're just trying to open everything up and whatnot. And like you said, even PKs. I kind of agree with you, Amit. Penalties would be a poor way to decide these Champions League matchups. But if you're UEFA and you're trying to capture the modern fan, it's probably, gonna entice them a lot more seeing the penalty shootouts and whatnot. Obviously, as football fans, if your team's involved, it's probably the worst. But would you have to agree with that too, Omar? That they're kind of trying to go towards this, modern day fan and whatnot, and get away from the traditionalists, or what?
Look, it's obvious they are trying to, and they even talked about it. Shefferin and some other fellows from UEFA and FIFA talked about trying to make the game more interesting to the younger crowd who's watching football now, and their attention span is very limited. So this kind of shift in what would you call it? This kind of shift in mentality and the way of approaching this tournament might make it more attractive to them. But honestly, I don't find it more attractive. Like Amit said, for example, the match between PSG and Real Madrid, it was pretty obvious that Real Madrid came to play for a draw and take the tie away to their own ground and try to play there. And we'll probably see a lot more of that. A lot more teams just trying to play for a draw away and then win it at home, which is an advantage to the better teams who finish in the top of their group. But in 2 years, we're going to have a different format, so it might change
So it
altogether.
probably will change, yeah.
Yeah.
Amit, what do you think on that?
Yeah, and by the way, the new format in 2024, there are many things that's going to change, and it includes the fact that we won't see a draw on the final 16. We're going to see the team with the best result, the best results play against the team with the number 16, I think, results, and the second against 15th place. So it's going to be something that we need to get used to. Um, but let's see how things unfold, because they're
Yeah.
still they claim Real Madrid are still and behind the Super League, so we need to see about that. But still, I think we're going to, the Champions League is still very, very. It's fun to watch. Lots of stories, lots of interest, and on the other hand, you can say that Liverpool against the match between Liverpool and Inter Milan was a great one. It was,
Yeah.
in terms of football, you could not, move your eyes off the screen. It was such intense and quality game. We're going to see nice football, interesting matches, and I think one of the most balanced matches is Villarreal against Juve in this stage, which is, I don't have a clue how it's going to end. I think it's very, very even. You can say maybe Juve because of the name and the tradition in this specific tournament is a bit favorite, but when you dig into the professional side, the issues, I think the quality of the teams, tactics, coaches, it's very, very tight.
It's interesting because we're all over the map as Juventini, with our feelings in this one. You've got Villarreal that's scoring a ton of goals as of late, and Juventus not so much, and they're trying to find their bearings, especially after a couple January signings, Zakaria, and then obviously Vlahovic. And Vlahovic, fans are already becoming impatient in 3 matches of where these goals are and whatnot. So Villarreal is going to be a tough, tough test. Obviously, we know Dybala will be out as well. And the Dybala saga continues. And we're going to get to your thoughts on Juve. We have one last question in regards to Champions League and whatnot. And Omar had a question in regards to the Super League and basically if it is even a possibility. Because we talked a lot about the changes that UEFA has made with the Champions League and whatnot. And obviously, this didn't just come about because of nothing. Obviously, Agnelli and Perez spearheaded this Super League thing. I think it was done in a very, very poor manner. The way they just fired it out and the presentation was terrible. But, let's get your thoughts on, is that still a possibility, and what your actual opinion of the Super League is?
Well, I think it's all about the money, as the song goes on. From 2024, one of the promises of UEFA is to have, nowadays the revenues of the Champions League is about 3.5 billion euros per year, and that is going to rise to about 5 billion euros per year from 2024. It's about the money potential, and you remember when it was discussed, they said that the clubs who are going to participate in the Super League are going to get some massive billion dollar contract, something really imaginative. And so it comes down to money, and of course to politics. And I think you are right. The way it was done, you can argue if there was a chance anyway, if the Super League initiative would go on, because there is big forces that are opposed to this idea, and all the traditional ones, the football associations, like in England, like in other places, and this basic, people want football to be meritocratic and to be just. So you earn your place by finishing, qualifying from the league to the Champions League. They don't want to be a closed circle like in American sports. So I think that's a problem. And still Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Juventus, these three clubs are, they're holding on, and Real Madrid, really, really, Florentino Perez is taking it to court. He's really fighting for it. And I think in the end, as always, we're going to see the sides meeting somewhere in the middle. Having each one is going to have to to some things,
Give a little bit, yeah.
to give a little bit. Yes, they not get everything they wanted, but it's about money, it's about prestige, and you can you need to remember that anyway. Real Madrid, in today's climate, in today's football financials, we have every year we have Barcelona and Real Madrid in the Champions League. This year specifically, Barcelona is a little bit in trouble, but still, it's almost every year that the big clubs arrive. The biggest clubs who have problems, they are from the Premier League, where there's a lot of money and there's a lot of competition. And in the Premier League, every year you have 2, 3 big clubs or rich clubs who stay out. So you can argue maybe 6 teams from the Premier League, and that's I think what's going to happen. We are going to have a bit more power given to the big clubs and to the big leagues. They're going to, but still, I think it's we need to see some kind of preliminaries and chances of smaller clubs from smaller countries to arrive to participate there, because it's football, and football is we should remember that we are talking about Champions League, and yes, we know that it nowadays it's a close club of several number of clubs that could win the Champions League. But 30 years ago, we had the Red Star Belgrade. Before that, we had Steaua Bucharest, we had PSV Eindhoven. We had some different clubs who did that. And we should also remember that Ajax Amsterdam, for example, was the whisker from playing the finals not so many years ago. And this year's they also have a great team. And Villarreal was also like a Riquelme penalty away 15 years ago from the final. So there are always these teams that can pose the big surprises. Of course, Porto against Monaco, this final in 2004. We should, football in its base, football has a lot of surprises in it, so we should give some meritocracy, but we should not also deny that in this financial climate, the big clubs should get a bit more, because that's how it works, and people want to watch the big clubs playing against each other, and it's only good for the competition. We don't want to see Real Madrid against Manchester United played only once in a decade. We want to see this more regularly, each other year, every 2 years, 3 years. But big clubs should play one against the other. I think that's the other thing I want to mention is I think the domestic leagues outside the Premier League should be a bit smaller. If we talk about the Italian league, it should be reduced to 18 teams or 16 teams. In the last 5 years, if I'm not mistaken, each year in the Serie A, 2 of the 3 teams that are promoted are directly relegated, and some of them really without competition, without the ability to create something, and they only create negative records like Benevento and all this. So there is this push. We need to see the domestic leagues outside the Premier League, which is a different story. The Premier League is really, you should give them credit. They are competitive, but all the other ones should be. We should see them reduced to 18 clubs or even 16 clubs, and it's going to happen because you see this is the trend in France. They're going to have the league reduced to 18 clubs, and in Germany it's already like that, and I think that's where we're going.
Yeah, that's interesting. Omar, would you be for that? It makes sense. I mean, when you look at the records of the teams that get promoted and then immediately relegated, I think 18 would be fine. 16 might be a little light though. But yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that. Omar, what do you think?
Yeah, I want to say yes. I think it will do good for the rest of the leagues, and there are always 1, 2, 3 teams who are basically out of their depth and can't really compete in the same league. But let's take Germany, for example, which has been the case for I don't know how many years. They have 18 teams. and they have no outside owners. It's all like 50 plus one, and one team dominates the entire league for a decade now. So is it is obviously better for maintaining the players' health and reducing the number of games, because UEFA don't do them any favors, and adding more international competitions and changing the format to 10 games instead of 6 in the Champions League. So I would probably say yes. Maybe for that reason, even 16 I'm fine with. It may be a bit harsh on teams that have some good seasons, some bad seasons, for Sassuolo, Genoa, and those type of clubs that are always in Serie A. But yeah, obviously, look how many injured players we have right now because of the amount of games we have in one season. And eventually, you go into the important games, and that's when you're missing all of your most important players. When the season is March, February, when you play the most important parts of the season.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would have liked to see Dybala and Chiellini and Bonucci and Bernardeschi play in order for Juve to be more competitive and not get eliminated against Villarreal, as it were the case in the past 3 seasons, where we lost to I don't want to say lesser teams, but maybe inferior, just inferior teams, and not because we were bad in some of these games, but we were missing also a lot of players. The Ajax in 2017-18 were a fantastic team, but we have to remember Rugani started the match, both games, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I just want to see healthy players and the best players play most of the season.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
one?
In terms of the league, before we jump to Juventus, Amit, I've got a question for you in terms of Serie A. What
Yes.
does the league need to do in order to better market itself and whatnot? Because everyone that follows it loves it, and it's a fantastic lead. It's got a ton of drama. The drama in the managers alone is a television dream with these managers. And what does the league need to do? Why do they continuously fall short? What do you, in your opinion, what does Serie A need to do to better itself?
First of all, we see lots of investment from outside, especially from the United States and from Northern America in Italian football. And you know, when you read about it, mainly they speak, the experts, about the fact that they see the potential. They see that there's a lot of room to grow, to bring back Italian football to the glorious days of 20, 30 years ago. And they talk about the potential in terms of new stadia built. And I think one of the main issues when we talk about the revival of Italian football is new stadia, and it should be a national effort. For example, the San Siro, who they always talk about it, and now today we see 2026, which in Italian terms is 2096 because it's never going to happen, and the Via del Torre of Rome, the Rome new stadium. So I think first of all, it's mind-boggling for me that in Italy, which has the most beautiful architecture, the most beautiful Renaissance design, everywhere you go has the ugliest football stadia. I mean, how can you go to Florence, to Rome, to see all this? Like you like walk in a city that is practically a museum, and only the football pitches and stadium look like garbage. Even in Spain, when you go to the in Spain, they have amazing football stadia. In Bilbao, Osasuna, in Pamplona, sorry, in Seville, they have three great football stadiums. So I think, first of all, the infrastructures
Infrastructure.
and the stadia have to be more welcoming, more modernized, and this is for me a national effort. The thing that's really should be somehow should be done. Other thing, when we talk about the change of format, why did I bring up the idea of reducing it to 16 teams? Because if you have 16 teams, Berto, it means that you play 30 rounds, like 2 rounds, like 30 rounds, and then you have a possibility of make a playoff to decide the champions, which means the bigger teams play one another. In Italy, we have 7 big teams nowadays. If you include Atalanta, and you can even say that you have eight big teams because Fiorentina, with Rocco Commisso's money and ambitions, has also turned to into a great team with one of my favorite coaches, Vincenzo Italiano. So I think having a playoff, which is now discussed also in Germany. By the way, in Germany for the past few weeks, they are talking about maybe deciding the champions through like through a cup module, like playing really semi-final and final to decide who is champions, because otherwise everybody knows before the season starts that Bayern Munich are going to win.
Exactly, and I think that's yeah, it's that's tough. That's a big change for fans that have been following these leagues for a long time, and would take a bit of getting used to. And it does feel like it's a rule or stipulation brought in to stop these repeat winners, especially Bayern's at 10 seasons in a row. So it's
And we had
massive.
the same, if you remember, 2 years ago, they were speaking the same about Italian football, but it was a big difference. And I think that Juve, it's a bit ironic, but Juventus are the big winners from the fact that Juventus went backwards, because nowadays people can appreciate more what winning Serie A 9 seasons in a row really means and how difficult it really is. And of course, the Milan clubs went backwards. They had terrible decade, finishing seventh and sixth, and not really not being in the picture. They were not competitive at all. Mostly Juve, were fighting against Rome and Napoli. Uh, but uh, but now I think it's really becoming interesting. We have this Serie A, which is not only full of goals and spectacular matches with tons of goals and attractive football. I think it's really amazing to see Italian football, which was until today. I talk with people who like football but are not really watching every week, but they are still with this mindset that Italian football is negative, is defensive. And I try to convince them, listen, the last 3-4 years in Italian football, you have the most goals scored from all the big leagues. You have more than 3 goals a match. You have amazing open matches and attractive football, which you can really fascinating, great pace, intensive football, everything you want to see. And on top of that, we have this great and really open title race, which is you have 3 teams, at least 3 teams, fighting for the title now, and it's really good to see.
Yeah,
And I think Juve, what they did is incredible, and no one is going to match the record of their 9
yeah.
successive titles.
Real quick, I would just want a yes or no from Omar and from you, Amit. Deciding the winner of Serie A through playoffs. Yes or no? Are you? Would you say yes or no? Omar, you kind of got a smirk there. What do you
Ah, yeah, like I said, it's a bit hard to get used to the idea, but
I say no
yes,
personally.
I want to point something out to emphasize something. When I say playoff, I don't mean semi-final and final, which is how, by the way, championship were decided when they started the Italian league in the late 19th century. I'm not in favor of that, but what I am in favor is after you play 2 rounds of 15 games, like you play 16 teams, 30 rounds, and then you play 6 extra rounds of the big teams, of the teams high in the table, and you decide the title between the big teams. And by the way, we forgot to mention, but one of the changes that I really don't like in Serie A is the fact that they change the schedule intentionally. That all the big matches will be finished with already by this stage. We have only 2 games left till the end of the season between two of the big teams, and one of them is Napoli against AC Milan in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah,
So I think it's really poor. We want to see the big games playing much later and more decisive.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very tricky. I need to see it in a different league and how it works out. Because if you finished in the first place and you won by 20 points, then the team beneath you doesn't really deserve an equal shot at the title,
This is
which
it.
causes a
And that's
problem.
kind of my thoughts too. I was with Omar, is that you're starting to take away a lot of the importance of those previous rounds matches, because all a team needs to do now is get into that dance. And then are they worthy of really playing? You know what I mean? It's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah,
I
initial
think
gut says no, but we're gonna change things up now. We're gonna get into Juventus. I'm gonna open up questions to the live viewers. I'm going to be taking some from there, but Omar, we have some we have already set up. Omar, I'll allow you to ask Amit these Juventus questions, and I'm going to keep an eye out on the live chat for some coming in. And we have one already, a great one from Rocco Fasano that we will pull in. But Omar, kick us off with the Juve questions.
Okay, so the first one is: do you think Juventus made the right call in bringing back Allegri?
I think it was the right call, especially giving stability, giving. I think the club lost its way, and for me, one of the biggest tragedies in the Juventus for the last few years is the scapegoat mentality. They had Sarri, who is not Juve DNA, so everybody say, okay, it's only Sarri's fault. Like, but the main problem was the management issues, and falling behind, not bringing the right players to play. So saying it's Sarri's problem, and saying, oh, it's Ronaldo, is not a Juventus type of player, and Juve really needed someone to get it back on track. It's really difficult. We should remember how this season started, losing Ronaldo right, actually after the season already started. Juve were unprepared. They brought in the last minute of the summer Moise Kean, but I think this winter transfer window was very, very important, bringing in Vlahovic and Zakaria, starting to rebuild the team, which everybody knows that is, needs rebuilding. And I think now Maurizio Arrivabene, his biggest task is really rebuilding and starting doing the structure things that actually were left neglected since Beppe Marotta left to Inter. I think this is the biggest change in Italian football. The Marotta, when he left Juve to Inter, that was maybe the if you I need to put my finger on the place when Juve went behind and Inter went forward, it's this management changes. And Allegri, I really believe in him. I think he has Juve DNA inside him. I think many players like Dybala, Morata, Chiesa, and others, they trust him, or as well as the veterans, Chiellini, Bonucci, and yeah. But of course, we need stability. Juve in the last couple of years, the last thing they had was stability. So yes, I think he is the right man, but it's going to take a little bit of patience because this team really went too much, too further back, and they
Yeah.
need to rebuild and to strengthen.
Now, a quick reminder to everybody, like the video, okay? If you're new, subscribe to the channel, your one-stop shop for everything Juventus. Amit, in
Yeah.
this, you've said Allegri is the right guy, but we do have a couple questions from the live, and one saying from Dells, could we not have gained stability with a different coach, Amit? And then to further that, Rocco Fasano has come up with Vincenzo Italiano was in the same class as Pirlo at Coverciano. Maybe we chose the wrong graduate. What do you think in terms of those questions, Amit?
Well, everybody's smart in hindsight, but I think Italiano is a great, great prospect of a manager. He's done such a terrific job at Spezia, which should really, really be celebrated. And of course, amazing impact in Florence with Fiorentina. And I think he's going to have a bright future and maybe even come to Juve. But I think after the Pirlo adventure, when you brought in an unproven, inexperienced coach, This is very, very natural to fall back to the things you trust, and to bringing Allegri, who's the second most successful coach maybe in the history, or let's see, one of the most successful coaches in the history of Juventus. So I think it was natural, even from the psychological standpoint, and uh, he should be given time, because we all know that Juve have problems. Vlahovic, who is a terrific young prospect, is going to play tomorrow his first ever Champions League match. We should not forget about that. There's some issues with experience in the squad, but when the main problem with Juve was management issues, and the fact that, for example, Paulo Dybala, we are hearing for the last 2-3 years, Paulo is going to sign a new contract. His agent Jorge Antun is coming, and we hear, and now next week we hear it for 2 years, and nothing really happened. So I think that's the red light over there. The problems are not. I think Allegri is a great coach, and the main issues to solve are in management. And I think Arrivabene is going to do a good job, because he's a very good in this role of director.
Before we get to Omar's next question about Juventus, I have one about Dybala that you're bringing up here. A lot of fans have now turned their backs on Paulo and say it's time to let him go. Would you let Paulo walk?
To tell you the truth, I'm a bit disappointed in Paulo Dybala, because we heard from him how he committed he is to Juve and how he's a fan. But then you see, all his entourage, and how he, conducts himself, and I don't buy his words anymore. I think we should not really forget how great Dybala was until the season before Ronaldo arrived, with scoring 22 league goals, 26 in total, and even before that, when he was starring against Barcelona on the way to the finals. I think Dybala should. He's a great, and we see his ability again. I think he should be much more, let's say. Um, Sorry, I lost the word. But I mean, Dybala should be much more, playing week to week football. He had problems, after one good performance, he tend to disappear. So bringing back the stability, I want to say stability. So we need to see him getting back to the same level that we saw him from the pre-Ronaldo area. I think he got it in him, especially when he has some other quality players around. And Juventus, we should not forget. If you look on the Serie A table right now, Juve has the worst attack from the first 9 teams. Only 38 goals scored, and and it was much worse, until Vlahovic came, because so few goals in this team. So the defense is better, but I think in terms of attack, Paulo has it, but he really, really needs some complementary players. Ronaldo was not complementary to him. They didn't get along too well on the pitch. And I think now with Vlahovic and Morata, it looks a bit better. And let's see who Juve could bring in the summer. But I think still, he's a great player, and Juve should hold on to him. And the thing is, his salary and his stuff, he wants €8 plus 2-3 bonuses. I see him as a Juve symbol, and I think Juve should hold on to him, because Dybala is really great talent.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I want to see more from him.
Omar's got a question that everybody's asking, and even Alamesh has here, and it's in terms of Allegri's play style. Go ahead, Omar.
Yeah, so the question is, because Allegri seems to, just maintain the same style of play he had, 2 years ago when he was at Juve, which is pretty defensive. And my question is this style of play even relevant today, or has the game just progressed away from Catenaccio and it's not sustainable anymore?
Well, it's a great question. We should not forget that Juve, mainly speaking, is quite of good results. The performances could be better, but only I think one loss in the last 16 games of Juventus in the Super Cup against the Inter Milan. In the league, yes, couple of draws, latest results, but still the team at least is not losing. So the defensive stability, we know that it's the base for all the Juve football, especially under Allegri. What I think Juve should, the area on the pitch where Juve should strengthen the most, for me, is the midfield. Bringing back Pogba is one of the main talks, but and other stuff. And but last time when Allegri was coach, I think the maybe the most important player, at least tactically, was to Allegri's football was Miralem Pjanic. You and now at least we Juve brought Locatelli, as a regista to compensate a little bit because he has some good football in him. I think we still need to see in this era of Vlahovic um, how Juve shapes. It's not. I think what we saw in the last few matches is not the final say. We saw like the Christmas a version of the Christmas tree formation, the 4-3-2-1 with Dybala and Morata behind Vlahovic. Now Dybala is injured. I think what we're going to see is Allegri trying 4-4-2, a little bit more wings, add wings to the game, which Juve didn't have lately. And the Metzeli, maybe, when I speak of 4-4-2, if I get a little bit into tactics, there are two kinds. One of them is, for example, the diamond with McKennie as number 10, is Zakaria and Rabiot as Metzeli, Locatelli from behind. The other one could be straight line, but trying Vlahovic and Morata now as two strikers, and maybe later with Dybala as playing behind him, is something that I think Allegri is going to try. So it's still something, a project that is built, and I really think that Juve must buy smart and really get some big Italian names in the market that I want to see Juve. When you see now Inter is leading on Juve about I mean the biggest Italian prospects. For example, the Sassuolo players, the Scamacca. He's a great prospect for my money. This Italian striker, Raspadori, and Fratesi, which is a great Metzali, great midfielder. And I think Juve should buy smart and strengthen the midfield and also add depth in the wing backs. I think Alexandro and Quadrado, you need a little bit bring something new over there. You remember the days of Cancelo? I think many bad deals you've had done have done in the last few years. One of them was getting rid of Cancelo, which we see nowadays how great a player he is in Man City. Another is letting Demiral goes to Atalanta. We saw Demiral stopping Vlahovic 2 games ago. So I think Juve won't repeat the same mistakes. And yes, there are some issues. The teams needs to be rebuilt, and Allegri, I think, is the right man to be there to for this process.
Can his style compete against the top sides in Europe, do you believe?
Well, I think it's a very good question, and I think first of all, in terms of quality, in terms of the pace of the game, which is a very important issue. I would like very much to see Juve qualify and play the next round. First of all, I think Villarreal, as I said, is a great contest. It's about a 50-50. They have great midfield with Capu, with Parejo, with some great other players, Moy Gomez and others. And Pau Torres is one of the emerging central defenders. It will be very interesting to watch De Ligt, who is becoming a real leader in the Juventus defense on one hand, and Pau Torres, who is one of the great defensive prospects from Spanish football, on the other. Gerard Moreno, really, really some great talents in Villarreal. But I want to see Juve in the next stage being tested against an English side, because we all have this trauma, this incubo, as they say in Italian, from the match against Chelsea, which Chelsea really demolished Juve, the 4-0. It doesn't matter. Juve finished head of the group, but this 4-0 in Stamford Bridge, this really heavy defeat still sits in the mind of many Juve fans as kind of proof that Juve is very, very far from where it should aspire and from the level it should play and be. And, on the other hand, there was this 1-0 win against Chelsea, which, let's say, Juve was very, very defensively playing, and they missed a lot of players. It was a very small team mentality, the way they approached the game. So I want to see Juve play against the big teams, the English teams. I think they are not there yet, but bringing in players like Pogba in the summer, some other players who can strengthen the team is going to be vital.
Yeah, it's going to be crucial in the summer. I still have to admit I'm becoming more and more impatient with Max, because I agree with you. There is a lack of quality if we're looking at some of those teams in comparison to Juventus, but a lot of us fans aren't asking for much either, because ultimately, no matter what group of players you've been given, it is your job to make them play as a team. And I see a lot of broken, disjointed play, and you see a lot of the same excuses being brought up that, well, he's got injuries to all these players. But if you have a system in place, in theory, all these other teams are going through the same thing. All these other teams have had injuries, have had to fill the gaps and whatnot, and they do it because they rely on a system and players know their roles. For me, I see Max as being a little bit lost in his return. Now, it is only the first season, and I think he will progress and get better. But one of his biggest strengths that we all always praised him for was his ability to find the roles of the players and get them to play together as a solid unit. I have not seen that yet. We have seen it, but then it reverts back and it goes completely backwards. So it's like this season has felt like we'll take one step forward and two back. And then we go again, one step forward, two steps back. So I need to see a little more from him. Also, one of the biggest things was he was praised heavily for being able to make those mid-match adjustments. And I have
Yes.
not seen him hit the mark on a lot of tweaks and adjustments and changes. And that's something that, nobody could deny about Max. He had this ability to flip the script on a match instantly, and he has kind of lost that touch. And
I
you
completely
can
agree
make
with
the
you.
argument that that is player quality. However, when you watch a game like the last Derby della Mola against Torino unfold, now, you know, it's this preference. It's how you view, is the cup half full or is it half empty? Because, many say, well, look what happened to these other teams this weekend. We did good managing not to lose. But in saying we did well managing not to lose, I think we have completely lost sight of the fact we did nothing to win that game. We did nothing to win that game. So I understand the frustrations, but I mean, anything to touch on that?
I completely agree with you. I think it was very, very, in the early stages of the season, we saw some rust in the Allegri decision. One should not forget that Juve pay heavy price for the very sluggish start to this season. And they started really, really poorly. You remember after 4 or 5 rounds, they were already speaking Juve will not be in the top 4 this season. So
Yeah.
don't forget where Juve has been and where they are today, which is a much, much better position. Even, still, the top 4 place is far, far from being safe, and they're going to fight until the end. But I think you're right, and Allegri, some of his decisions are annoying. For example, pulling out Vlahovic in the 75th minute against Torino when you need a goal. And you should also remember that the let's say the gaps are not we used to Juventus to see a Juve side that wins 24 out of 25 rounds in a row in the when Allegri was the coach 4 or 5 years ago. Nowadays it's more complicated. For example, Torino with Juric, who is a great coach, they have done some big steps forward. And Juventus, on the other hand, I want to remind our viewers and our listeners something. When in 17-18 last season, sorry, of Allegri, before he came back to Turin, you had a midfield. You had players like Mario Mandzukic, who his soul, his Juve DNA. He knew exactly how to play the mezzala, the half striker, half a midfielder player. He had this Pjanic, who was a playmaker. He has Marquisio was playing even. Dybala, Higuain. It was a different, really a different team. And the league, the other teams were lagging behind. When you talk nowadays, you see that Juve still needs to be better. Rabiot, for example, is not a player for Juve standards. We had Ramsey, who's not that. So I think a coach, and I read Allegri's book, Allegri's autobiography, and one of the things that he writes in his autobiography is that the coach is always, and it's a little bit disappointing, because we always like to talk about how coaches are genius and tactical minds, and they decide matches. But he says, actually, we are really depending on the quality of players we had. And when you have the best player like Ronaldo, it's much easier, or Dybala in his prime, it's much easier. So I think everybody knows that Juve must strengthen its squad, and they made a great step in the right direction this past January. Not only the player they bought in, but also the player that they let go, like Kulusevski and of course Bentancur. But still, it's what made Juve great was the management. You remember the years before Andrea Agnelli with Jean-Claude Blanc and all the others, the seventh place, which the team was going nowhere, 2 years in a row, seventh place. And then suddenly, bringing in the right players, and Juve were masters of bringing players on free. Sami Khedira and Blaise Matuidi, and so many players, Pogba and others, Pirlo, who came, free, were on the shelf. So this type of shrewd management needs to come back to Juve, and I think they have now in the higher management, they have the right personnel to make this decision to bring Juve back, to where it belongs.
Omar, you had one more question. He kind of Amit started to touch on, but let's fire that last one, and then we'll get into a couple outside questions I see in the live.
Okay, so my question is: has Serie A, basically the rest of the teams, have they closed the gap with Juve, or has Juve level just dropped, or maybe both?
Of course, it's a combination of both. I think Inter was nowhere to be seen. Even 3 years ago in the Spalletti area, there were 60 points. They never, I think, got more than 70 points. Inter for many years. Bringing in Marotta and Conte, they made a great leap forward. I think Atalanta has also made huge strides. And by the way, Atalanta now has some American money from the new owners, which is going to be very interesting to follow. Though Atalanta is in a very bad shape, only one win in the last 8 matches in the league. So which really is a good sign for Juventus fans. But I think it's a combination of both. But again, Juventus for the last few seasons had really gone behind, and they neglected some major issues. They had a whole season of getting only 7 goals from their midfield. In Vidal, Pogba, Pirlo days, each one of them got more than 7 goals. The last few years, the was no offensive support, and mainly some bad issues. Ramsey, Rabiot, Other players who didn't made it in the Juve squad. So Juve lagged behind, and of course, Barzali, who we don't speak because he should have retired. He was aging, but still, when you had this BBC, this best in the world trio in defense with Buffon behind them, it was a different time. It was different times, and now you don't have even Pjanic, and Pjanic is not really Pirlo. So it was, you went a year and a year, and Juve really fell behind, and they were victim of, maybe the fact that the league was not so competitive. So they a bit of I don't know if you call it if they fell asleep or something. But the fact is that the last few years, Juve really made some big mistakes,
Yeah.
and I think they also did not identify these mistakes in the right time.
And I think that pandemic couldn't have come at a worse time for Juventus financially, being tied into Ronaldo with so much money, right? Omar,
Yes.
I don't know about you, but I will say this. After watching this past week's worth of results, I am even more frustrated after the Derby della Mola draw. Okay, after watching what the rivals did, another huge missed opportunity. Juventus could have flipped the script on things and really put some pressure on there. It was always a dream. It was always an outside dream, that Scudetto, whatnot. But they had an opportunity to make it interesting. So Omar, I don't know if you're as frustrated as I am after seeing these other results, but I'm more upset now about that draw.
Well, obviously, look, I'm sort of a half glass full guy, but this is already a glass half empty case because it's not the first time. I remember a few instances in the season that our opponents lost points and they all lost points. No one has had a perfect season, and Milan that lost to Spezia, I think we drew there too. We had a lot of opportunities to close the gap and solidify our place, maybe in second or third, and we blew all those chances. All
Yeah.
those chances. Napoli can enjoy themselves today and close the gap on Milan, widen the gap from Juve. So, like always, we are our own worst enemy, and it's all up to us. We could have won a lot of those games, but it is what it is. We're here where we are right now, and it's our. Luckily, like Amit said, we have our worst games are behind us. We only have Inter in April, and that's it. There's a good chance now we have Salernitana and Spezia and
Yeah.
Empoli, so we have a good chance of closing the gap. But
Top four remains the objective in league. Coppa Italia, let's get after it. We're in the semifinal of Fiorentina. Champions League, of course, knockouts kick off tomorrow. We have a bit of news. We've got some questions that were kind of pertaining to it. Basically, Bonucci and Pellegrini have trained with the group. They're training with the group. Bernardeschi still absent, although Allegri said in his press conference that Bernardeschi is okay and was not showing any signs of issues. Rabiot has taken a blow in training and went off limping. We all seen the video of that challenge from a youngster there. So yeah, Max continues saying that it's going to be a very tactical match against Villarreal. He says Vlahovic will be playing and Morata will be playing. Rabiot, he says, still will be available. So it's going to be interesting. Bonucci, obviously, he just reiterated playing with the team, didn't feel any pain, as well as Pellegrini. Artur, he says he's very pleased with him, but he still does not know which three players he will play in the midfield. I think he does. He's just not letting anything on to anybody. He knows exactly who's going to be in that midfield. The only thing that would change anything is an injury. Now, as we wrap up, and this was really great. It was fantastic having you on, Amit, and everything. Can you throw us a little prediction for tomorrow, if you if you would like to, here on Villarreal Juventus?
Whoa, it's gonna be a tough one. I think, as I said, Villarreal is a great team, and I think their coach Unai Emery has an amazing a record in European competition, especially not in the Champions League, mostly in the European League. Uh, but I think it's very, very tight one. And to me, I think Villarreal are going to notch it by by a score of 2-1. They're going to win it, which is going to leave everything open to the second leg. As I said, the thing I think I need to emphasize the most is I think what Juve lacks for me the most is an energetic midfielder. When you had Pogba and Vidal, you had these legs, you had Matuidi, you had these players who really work and dynamic, and players who are 50-50, box to box players. They could do everything. And for me, that is what Juve lacks. And why am I saying that? Because tomorrow you're going to see a player, Etienne Capoue from Villarreal, who is a nice player. He's not from the top drawer, but he's a very, very nice midfielder who has this tenacity and and the physicality and everything. And I think Villarreal are a very, very good side, especially at home. And it's going to be fascinating and really, really good atmosphere. And I think this one is a must watch.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting. Omar, how do you feel going into this one? Of course, for everybody listening live, we will be live tomorrow for Match Day Live. Okay, we just wanted to do a fun Champions League focused episode and Juve focused episode with football pundit like Amit here. But we will be live tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, getting absolutely hyped up for this one. Omar, how do you feel going into it?
It's hard for me to bet against Juve. I feel like it's going to be a draw, but I'm leaning towards Villarreal mainly because of our absentees. Danilo is probably going to play center back.
Yes.
Yeah, we're missing some players, some important players, especially experienced players. Maybe Bonucci will play. I don't know. He came back from injury recently and he looked off his pace, and uh, that's it. I believe I'm leaning towards Villarreal because they're a tough home team to beat, and they're in a better shape than us right now.
Yeah. And they
Yeah.
have a player in a fantastic form who scored a hat trick in the last round in the La Liga. His name is Albert Danjuma, the Arnaud Danjuma. Sorry, Danjuma. He played in Bournemouth last season. He's one of the best signs in this Spanish La Liga season. He already 12 goals to his name, and he's a very, very quick player. I think Juve are going to be tested really, really hard. And as you said, Omer, the defensive situation Juventus with all the absentees is worrisome. But let's hope Juve have a decent performance, and you need to be effective in this type of matches. You need to put emphasis on the free kicks, the set pieces, and know how to fast breaks and all this. To be very, very alert. As they say in Italian, one of the words I like most in Italian is consapevolezza. Is to be to know everything happens around you, to be concentrated, and to be not to make cheap mistakes. That's what I mean. And Juve needs to be at the top because it's going to be a tough one.
That's just it. This batch, we have to be honest, looking at it, has the potential to get very, very ugly for Juventus. They have to be sharp. They have to be aware. Now, while we're very weary of Villarreal and how they play, in theory, it should help Juventus because it will not be so closed off. So the issues that we see in Juventus trying to create opportunities and go through that, there will be more space provided. We have to be sharp. Players must have determined roles. They must know exactly what their job is to do, and it has to work together. But we can't be too standoffish. We can't be too reserved. We are going to have to push them back a bit. Otherwise, like I said, this has the potential to maybe get ugly. So it'll be very, very interesting to see what back styles up how he uses his players and who he uses. Bellucci, whether he plays or not, also changes things drastically because it allows you a little more freedom in what you can do with the outsides. And obviously, Quadrado being well as well, because we'll have to see how he plays. I expect a 4-4-2 from Max.
Yes. Yes.
I personally would not, in my personal opinion, but I expect Max to go 4-4-2. We will see. There will be more information coming out, and we'll be back tomorrow live. Amit, it's been an absolute pleasure. We hope to have you on as a guest again sometime in the future. Omar did a fantastic job preparing a lot of great questions, and the live, you guys are fantastic as always. Drop a like if you haven't subscribed to the channel, and yeah, that's it. Until tomorrow, as always, fino alla fine, forza Juventus. We'll talk tomorrow on match day. Ciao tutti.